Hello, everyone. Michelle here, ASIS Massage Education, with another live stream. Today's guest we've had on before. I'm so happy that she agreed to come back on. Is Susan Salvo, who is author and trailblazer in our massage community, and such an incredible resource for education in massage therapy. As recently published their 7th edition of the Massage Therapy Principles and Practice. And so when I found out it was out and ready to be used in our curriculum, I asked if she would come on and talk about some of the updates, because that's part of what we have to do in the massage world, is always be ready to update our thought process and what we're teaching to the next generation of massage therapists. So let's introduce Susan and say hello. Hi, Susan.
Hey, Michelle, how are you?
I'm doing so well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. It's so good to see you. Thank you for letting me come here and talk to massage therapists, massage students, massage instructors. This is kind of my happy place.
Yes, I love it. And thank you so much for all that you do for us to make our jobs a lot easier as massage instructors, taking the guesswork out of what we have to, what we're presenting to our students. So I'm so excited about this edition. So I know you were on the live stream last year with us, and we talked a little bit more about your background and how you got into the field. And but as like a little recap, can you kind of share a little bit of the evolution of the Principles and Practice textbook, and kind of how that all came to be, and how are we here at the 7th edition now?
Oh my gosh. So I started doing massage in the early 80s, and about the mid 90s, I was working on my education degree, and I was approached by a publisher called W.B. Saunders at the time. And W.B. Saunders had a textbook called Beard's Massage, and it was written for physical therapists, and they realized that massage was becoming its own entity. Mm-hmm. So they didn't really have a textbook that addressed that particular need. So they said, send me a prospectus. And I did. And one of the things that they said that I was really, really still impacts me to this day was when they were looking for, at a lot of different authors. It wasn't just me. But they said that mine was one of the meat and potatoes. Mine had a lot of solidarity to it, and not a lot of abstract concepts. Mm-hmm. So I was already kind of developing my niche for being kind of a good writer, knew how to investigate information, knew how to present information, and knew how to, when it was a weakness of mine, knowing where to go to fill those gaps. So really, really appreciate having the wide support system that I have in the massage industry, which is now global.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's so amazing. Do you know of company or schools in different countries that are using your textbook?
Well, the one I'm most familiar with in the UK is Jing, and they're in Brighton, which is below London. But as you may know, is most countries don't have the guidelines, the licensure that we do, but they still have educational standards. Yeah. So I'm there pretty often they have something called Jing Jam, and I have a pregnancy massage gig scheduled for them next month. But so just
Oh,
several ones
nice.
in the UK and in Ireland. So
Uh-huh.
oh, and the Philippines. Oh my gosh,
Oh,
the Philippines
interesting.
is a huge massage industry, and part of it is because those countries are being sought after for massage on cruise ships. So they still have to
Mm,
undergo a training program, and my books are
mhm,
used extensively because I have a learning disability. I tend to write for people who struggle with reading, which is another reason
mm.
my books have been so popular, not only in this country, but also in other countries where English is their second language.
Oh, that's so interesting. I didn't know that part because we do have students who navigate towards this field, or at least in our program, who maybe struggled with traditional schooling, particularly for some of the learning challenges that they had. And even here, with being a hands-on school, there's still a lot of book stuff
Mhm.
they have to do. So that's really fascinating that that's part of it. I know I've helped a few of them by getting like the audio, the like the ebook version, that kind of can read it to them, so that's helped a little bit too. But I that'll be a good selling point when I get students who come in and say, they're nervous about how to handle their schoolwork, and usually we come up with different plans to make them successful, which they usually are. So yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you for thinking about that for other people. That's awesome. So how long was it between sixth edition and seventh edition? How long have you been working on this?
4 years.
4 years.
So by publisher contract, you're expected to update your published work every 4 years. And I love it because, Michelle, you think you're going to go into a book and not have a lot of updates, and then you start diving in, and it's like, oh my gosh, so much has changed. One of the biggest changes, actually this isn't my PowerPoint. It's like, oh my gosh, for today with you, but is going to gender neutral terms.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
if you now, I didn't quite get that in my pathology book. I do like she and I would combine the two, but
Uh,
clearly we went to third person, and we did not do the binary system. We're going with the non-binary system.
Oh, that's so amazing. I love, as language evolves,
Mhm.
then we need to as well. I love it. And I haven't seen the whole PowerPoint. Would you like to jump into that now? Because we can kind of talk as we go through,
Yeah, sure.
and kind of use that as a guideline.
Yeah, just
And because
open
I
it
know
up,
you.
and you and I can just go through it together. There's not that many, and
Mhm.
but I did add some pictures this morning. I thought, oh, this will be kind of fun.
Okay.
So you'll see.
All right. So, did you want me to present from my side?
You know what? Let me try. So let me see if I
Okay.
present and slides, and oh, for my computer, upload file. Is that how I should do this? I'm going to go
If you
for
have
it.
a second monitor, yeah, we can go for that too. Because I usually just share my second monitor, because I'm not sure what happens on the other end
Okay.
on
Is it
that, but we'll
showing?
learn
Oh,
together.
okay. It's processing.
Not
If,
yet.
if it fails, we'll just use Plan B.
Okay, all right, and we can keep chatting about it until then. Yeah. So I know we were talking right before we went live about some of the main chapters that there's a lot of. I call it that you mentioned kind of the meat and potatoes kind of thing like that, and there's definitely a lot more meat that's been enhanced in there. And some of the chapters, let's see, the chapter 14, that's the clinical. I'll butcher the name. The clinical therapeutic chapter. What is it called? I know what it is, but I
I'm going to
can't.
call it
Clinical massage.
clinical massage.
I should
Now,
have just picked the right answer.
now it's looks like it's loaded.
Oh,
Can you?
okay. I see it. Yep. So let me add it.
Oh,
And
beautiful.
yay. And so
Okay.
you should be able to have control over it to be able to
Okay.
advance.
Okay, thank you. So anyway, so these are basically my two textbooks. The one you're talking about is Massage Therapy Principles and Practice, but sometimes because I have the pathology
Mhm.
textbook, that I've moved some information over to there, and many schools use both because they do kind of go hand in hand.
Mhm.
So, but I wanted to be sure that in case there's a question about the pathology book, that the students were like, oh yeah, okay, there's a pathology book here. So
Nice.
this is just overall looking globally, Michelle. So
Mhm.
one change for every single chapter is we added a multiple choice uh, section. So it's not just the matching sections, which are great
Mhm.
for retrieval. And we just got back from the AMTA School Summit. It was fantastic. And so we did a whole section on how to learn. And clearly, the whole rehearsal or retrieval is such an important part of learning. So be sure if you're in school or if you're doing a CE class that you're doing something after you do your lesson to go back and have to retrieve it, usually through a practice test, or sometimes you're doing teaching yourself. There's also
Mhm.
more bulleted lists. So going back to our concept about how do we make it easier for readers to use the book? It doesn't matter what country they live in. So bulleted lists tend to be easier for organization and for reading.
Yeah.
We've already talked about, the book size itself has increased by about 70 pages. Part of this, though, if you take a page and you touch it from 6th edition and you touch one from 7th edition, actually the pages are thicker.
Oh, yeah, I can feel that.
So that would be part of the way that the book has changed. Now, what I did, because the pathology book is so research heavy, that I went ahead and moved those sections onto Evolve.
Mhm.
So instead of having a piece on pregnancy massage or a piece on geriatric massage or a piece on hospice massage or sports massage, those have been moved to Evolve, which in Evolve is the website companion for the book. And then there are learning tips throughout the textbook. So if I advance the slide, what you see here is just I took a print screen and just showed you that this would be an example of a multiple choice question at the end of each chapter.
Nice.
So this would be one for chapter 11, which is the one we just talked about with pregnancy massage, geriatric massage, and disabilities and such. So this talks about some bulleted lists. Now these are both from chapter 14, which again we just talked about, which is the clinical massage chapter. This is on the, you can actually see a learning tip on the other side on this first column, but on the second column, you can see how we talk about the barriers of range of motion, and they're listed here as a bulleted section. And then the next section right underneath it, we dive right into infield. We define it, which is a big thing of mine. I define the term always first before we use it in the textbook. But this talks about the different types of infield. And this in particular has a bulleted list and a sub-bullet to show the readers that it is underneath. These are types of normal infield, hard and soft infield. Okay. On the other side, I mean, we have to learn about the gait cycle. Everyone knows that. It's a very, very important aspect of assessment. And I use a bulleted list in this case. But in this particular case, the list is numbered because for this particular gait cycle, it literally is 4 steps in each phase. So I thought it would be really easy for teachers and really easy for students to understand that if it was in a bulleted as opposed to just a paragraph form.
Nice.
So this is one major change that's in this textbook. And this just shows you learning tips. This is from chapter 20, which is on joints and bones and joint movements. So this talks about abduction and adduction, how to differentiate between the two. And this second learning tip on this one was about how to differentiate if the ulna is on the left or the right side, the medial or the lateral side versus the radius. So again, as a learning tip, and they're always bolded in italics in uppercase. So they pop a little bit in for the reader. For the learning
I love that. I never knew that ulnar little finger tip. I always do the radius is red because we stick our thumb up.
Oh, cute. I like that. We may have to get you to help me with some learning tips for the next edition, Michelle. All right. So now I'm going to go chapter by chapter. And again, anytime, jump in if you have any questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
So for chapter 1, History of Massage, I updated the timeline because we've got so many cool things that have happened this last couple of years, including the compact.
Yeah.
So I added a little bit about the interstate compact and what that means to the profession. And I added a little bit of information on the Alliance for Massage Therapy Education and the history of the Alliance. And the Council for Schools, which is actually wasn't part of the AMTA, and it was dissolved the year that the Alliance was formed. So I love those little, to think about massage in terms of history. So I really added more to the timeline. I also, of course, updated the sections, and I added an interesting perspective on the future of massage, because our massage future has changed quite a bit in terms of why people get massages and how it's being used in healthcare. And you should not be surprised that much of it has to do with mental disorders.
It's so interesting you say that, because I was just thinking about, we have our class here, case studies, where a student takes a condition or a person and follows that person throughout their program and documents all the changes and all the different techniques they use with them. And in my time here, it's about 6 years I've been here, I've seen such a transformation, but from, my shoulder issue, my low back issue, to this like spectrum of all kind of mental health conditions, that if they're not the star of the case study, they're definitely a huge component of it. So it's interesting it's not just my like, oh, that's interesting, is that something? It is something. So
It's,
I'm glad
yeah.
I'm glad that we're talking about that.
Yeah, and in my pathology book, I devote a whole chapter on mental disorders, including PTSD and depression and anxiety, including sleep disorders. That's a really big hot topic right now in our profession. And I have really knocked on the door of the Federation to start adding it, mental disorders, to the content outline, because it's very underrepresented right now on the NBLEX.
Yes.
But I'm hoping to get that changed in the next couple of years.
Awesome.
So chapter 2, not surprising, I expanded the LGBTQ plus section. And what I did for this one, Michelle, I went, and cultural competency, big increase in that. And I wanted to get the voice of a member of that community in the textbook. So actually, Anna Bott, B-O-T-T, from the UK, again, I met her in Brighton. She was the major contributor for this particular section, and she did a fantastic job on defining the terms. What is trans male? What is trans female? What is an ally? And how can we make our practices more friendly for all cultures? And this is another one I added for chapter 2. And I got this when I was working my doctorate degree. It's called the turbulence theory. And I added it underneath how to make professional decisions. Because one of my favorite quotes from Albert Einstein is that the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. So what I do is, and this actually comes from the pilots in flight school. And they also use it in educational flight for principals and people who are leaders. But again, we all are leaders. You understand the democratic society in many ways. But like if a client comes in, so when you have a problem that you're dealing with, if you think about it in terms of 4 tiers of turbulence, then you can actually make a better decision. Is this really a big deal, or is this not? Does this really deserve canceling a client or terminating a session or whatever? So so this gives the student and the teacher a way to think about questions in terms of a framework. And then I added a fantastic section, because we now have research, thank you, on sexual harassment by massage clients. So you're going to be shocked when you read this section. Because a lot of times the way we think about sexual harassment, they do not use the word sexual misconduct. They use the word sexual harassment, which I thought was kind of interesting. What that really looks like, where it typically takes place, what forms it typically takes place in, because I think we need this information so we can teach our students how to be ready if and when it happens.
Yeah. Is this, I was just listening to Deborah, I can't remember her last name, from the SFM TV, was on a podcast recently and talking about the data that they pulled from polling massage. Is this related to that data?
Actually, I was the person who told Deborah this.
Oh my goodness! Existed. Listen to that. I'm like,
so
connections. I love it.
But it's a Canadian study.
Okay.
So I said we need, even though I think the data is going to be similar, I said we need to do something here. And so she tagged it onto, as an aside, onto the last JTA, which stands for Job Task Analysis.
Yes.
So I am very excited. It hasn't been released yet. But it is similar, but not exactly the one that the federations do.
Okay. All right. Yeah. And it's good that this information is coming up, because I know, 20 plus years in the field, I definitely know where that has happened and hear of many of the stories. But what you hear on the news and what's the big headlines is the therapists having misconduct. But yeah, it's definitely the flip side, and those little tiny microaggressions that pop up and things like that. That's a concern. Yeah.
So I'm really excited about that. So let's look at the next chapter, which is chapter 3. The only thing I changed on this one, of course, this goes back to my international travels. When you go to other countries, they use something called massage wax. So I went ahead and added that to chapter
Mhm.
3 as another option for us as a lubricant choice. And then I added, of course, topical CBD products and the
Okay.
pros and cons of working with them. So that is in chapter 3. Now in
Uh-huh.
chapter 4, I really, really enjoyed this. Because this is mainly self-care and career longevity. I
Mhm.
added a little bit more detail about what constitutes a low, a moderate, and a high intensity exercise. And
Mhm.
all this comes from the Council on Sports Medicine.
Okay.
Also, I expanded the section on neuromotor exercise. I have become a yoga enthusiast over the last probably 6 years. And the way that yoga defines what it is very much in line with neuromotor exercise, or I could say that the opposite. Neuromotor exercise is very much in line with yoga is.
Mhm.
And it's basically core strength, and it helps to reduce things like fall risks. And so
Mm.
I updated that section. And look at the next bullet, Michelle. I actually added the concept of rest under sleep. The reason why is because so much of our current research on preventing injuries for massage therapists is to allow the therapist to rest between clients. But what does that mean?
Mhm.
Rest?
Yeah. That can be widely interpreted, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So in this particular section, you're going to love this section. I talk about active rest and passive rest. And again, in all of my books, you know this, I cite my sources. This is not the world
Mhm.
according to Susan. I
Uh-huh.
am a citation machine. You know where it came from. So
Yeah.
you can go dig deeper if you want to. And under the managing stress section,
Mm.
I added gratitude,
Oh, I love
because
that.
yeah, that is also one way that you can manage stress. And I got this idea from a webinar that I took on the science of wellness,
Mhm.
and I just loved it, loved it, loved it. Okay, so on chapter 5,
And I'm following along this whole time in case you're wondering why my eyes are diverted. So I'm making sure I'm making
I
mental notes to myself.
That's awesome. So nothing major on chapter 5, so I'm going to go straight to chapter 6. I added the bio of Nikki Monk. I did this for 2 reasons. Number one, I believe in massage, we should create a culture of research. Part
Mhm.
of that comes from massage school, getting students exposed to research, getting them comfortable with it.
Mhm.
So wanted to highlight a researcher, and I wanted to be a female.
Nice.
So Nikki was available, and actually a beautiful one. I hope you get a chance to read it. She's one of my favorite people on the massage research front. She comes from a PhD background in geriatric massage. That's
Oh,
kind of
okay.
her love, and then she just she takes it so much farther. This chapter was developed by Joanne Shefton. It's one of my contributed chapters, and she added, and I love this one, a neurophysiological effects of massage. So she updated and changed that title because that's what they're using in research. Then she
Okay.
added a section on massage for specific conditions and outcomes, including pain, anxiety, diabetes is in there, Parkinson's is in there, Alzheimer's is in there. So it just really is a nice compliment. And in there, she got involved with the Massage Therapy Foundation. Joellen did, and
Mhm.
in there they now have a 4-pronged agenda, and that is in this chapter as well.
Oh,
So
awesome.
it got a bit of an update thanks to Joellen.
Oh, I love the people who are able to be trailblazers in the research community because I get excited and then I get like, there's too much, crumble
Yeah.
crumble.
Well, again, I'm giving you not enough, just enough to get you to whet your appetite, but not enough to where you're like overwhelmed.
Yeah, yeah, I love how it's broken down here, so it's easy for it to kind of a stepping off point, and then there's pages and pages of the citations behind the chapter, so you can dive deeper.
Yeah. Okay. Now this one, the only change that I did here was I was involved with a couple of lawsuits where the therapist got injured by helping the client off the table.
Mm.
So I went to OSHA to see what
Uh-huh.
they're saying, and they're saying we should not be in healthcare. Don't be helping patrons off the table. Now they're using these machines that help transfer
Oh.
people. So again, and that's another thing that I do, Michelle, when I'm writing a chapter is not only what we're doing in our profession, but we have to be doing the same thing other healthcare professions are doing,
Mhm.
or other service professions are doing. We're all saying
Yeah.
the same thing. So I'll make sure that ours aligned with what healthcare is teaching and what OSHA is teaching. So that
Nice.
got a little bit of an update, and why we don't do
Mhm.
it. So
Mhm.
I'm not going to be the spoiler, so you have to read the section to learn why we don't.
Okay, I love that, and I'm always telling students to stop it. So, like, I know we want to try to be helpful, but we can't be injuring ourselves
Yeah,
either.
yeah.
So I'm
And that's a number one cause of injury in healthcare is musculoskeletal complaints from helping clients either turn or get out or into
Mhm.
the exam tables and the beds and stuff.
No.
Now this one got a little bit of an update. So chapter 8, stretching and massage. I added, obviously I want to go jump right to it because I know that's where your eyes went, pin and stretch. Finally, thank you. Add pin and stretch to there. I'm a little slow. I'm slow spot. I added types of massage, and this is becoming increasingly important. And I know this has been a double-edged sword in massage. I do a wellness massage and a clinical massage. A
Mhm.
lot of programs are starting to pull these two things apart. And part of it is I'm involved in several legal cases where the defense on the case wanted to try it as a medical malpractice case because there are caps on what can be awarded. So
Mm.
my job as an expert was to go in and say, this was not a medical massage or not a clinical massage or this or
Oh,
not a wellness massage and
yeah.
why this should not be considered medical malpractice. So I think that as the industry, including the legal industry, is really important for us to define these different types of massage.
Mhm.
So I went ahead and gave all the information in the textbook so you guys can flesh out the information in the classrooms.
Nice.
I added a section on side effects versus adverse events because this is something that's very, very important. When we start talking about informed consent, we have to know the difference, and we have
Mhm.
to get consent for both. I added physical forces. It is not my favorite thing, I'm sorry to say, but I do know what's on the MBLEX.
Mhm.
But we don't see it in the research literature. We don't see it in other professions like PT and OT. And manual therapy. And we don't see it when we define manual therapy in terms of insurance, CPT code.
Oh.
So
Mhm.
again, it's not my favorite. I think it was a bad move to go there, but I'm not
Yeah.
part of the ELAP, so I
Yeah.
don't make the rules.
That's it.
But it's not supported in other industries. But it's still in the MBLEX, so I have it in there.
Mhm.
And again, because we're talking about injury in terms of lifting clients, we also have to talk about a lot of stretching, and we're teaching a lot of these stretching classes now.
Yeah.
We still have to be careful because we can injure
Mhm.
ourselves. So
Yes.
there's a whole section about define what your risks are. Like a previous back injury, you're at a
Mhm.
higher risk. You should not be lifting clients.
Right.
And there's even something called vertical orientation, horizontal orientation, how close the client is to your body, how high or low the table is. All of those things factor in. And there's
Mhm.
actually a calculator that you can go to online. It's by,
Oh.
I think it's by OSHA as well, that you can put in this data, yes or no, and it'll talk about your risk factors. And then I
Oh.
expanded the section on pressure because I think we get this one again so wrong. And
Mhm.
we have a lot, and Tracy Walton did a really good job a few years ago with her pressure scale.
Yeah.
And I love what she did. Oh my God. When she
Mhm.
talked about tissue displacement, upper hand strength, lower body strength, height of the table, targeting the tissues. So I added a lot of her research and cited, of course,
I love it.
about that in this section. So it's a great new update to chapter 8.
Beautiful.
Okay, so chapter 9, not surprising because of all the COVID stuff.
Yes, I noticed a lot of this updated. Yeah.
So we really have to talk about not only standard precautions, but transmission-based precautions. So that
Mhm.
all this is CDC backed up. Of course, we had to expand the section on PPE, and the whole disinfection thing got updated. We really started talking about things like dwell time. You can't just put something on and then wipe it off. It has to air dry.
Right.
Go into a lot of this into in chapter 9. And then I added a recovery position onto emergency preparedness. So if your client does collapse, you'll know how
Mhm.
to put them safely into the recovery position. And that does a little image in there. And I
Mhm.
backed it up with a video. You can just, again, we can talk later about some videos that I can send you for your
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
but I do back this up with a video.
Nice.
Okay, chapter 10, we added discussions
I
on
love this one.
insurance and payments and insurance reimbursement. But then again, this fits beautifully, Michelle, into the wellness versus clinical massage.
Mm-hmm.
I added an interview protocol or strategy called PPOM. I actually had it a few years ago, and I thought no one was using it. I was wrong. People were like, put that back in, Susan. I said, okay. So it's a way to organize your interview, your consult with your client. And then I also added, when you do refer, it gives you some choices. So this came from Healthcare 101, because they do a lot of referral with their patients, and it's client as communicator, which is the most common, but client, you calling the clinic, which is the second, and then you writing a letter. And it talks about what needs to be in that conversation, what needs to be in that letter. So that's going to be in chapter 10 as well. And the only thing with Pico, I love Pico, I added a data table.
Oh, I did see that.
Yeah, and that's kind of cool because as you're gathering all these research studies, you have to organize them. So this talks about the data table that you can use in class. And in our schools, we actually have them do a PICO question, formulated PICO question, use research to answer that question.
Nice.
We just talked about this before we started our show. These are some differences for special populations. I really expanded the concept of disabilities and including the ADA Act and what that means and how you really can't deny services to someone with a disability. We talked about pregnancy massage in terms of essential oils and topical CBD. I'm not going to tell you what the FDA recommends, but you can take a look and see. I added a section on preterm labor because it's much, much more common than it was 4 or 5 years ago. And then I really, really expanded the section on geriatric massage. And because I want you to understand why we do what we do. My vitality assessments has always been in there, but now I'll go into a little bit about, well, what happens as we age? What happens to gait and skin and sight and hearing and cardiac output and response time? And then at the very end of those sections, I say these are the diseases that are more common in the elderly. So as you're learning about it, you can automatically be looking at these in terms of treatment planning.
Nice. Oh yeah. Okay.
Okay. So this hydrotherapy section. Now we'll tell you this, just going back to what I said about chapter 8 and the difference between clinical and wellness massage. Chapter 12 is set up for those two distinctions. So I have clinical applications and I have wellness applications. So that might be, it's really, really fun to put those things together in your modular program. I talked about earlier. So we updated the section on ICE. We're looking at ICE now with something that we don't do as much in acute care. And now we're looking at other acronyms, MCE and MEAT. I really expanded the section on SPA. This is one of the things too that was so funny. When I went to 6th edition, I got real tunnel vision on this chapter, and I just put in true hydrotherapies. And the schools went crazy. They were like, put the SPA stuff back in, Susan. And so, so I added things like body scrubs, body wraps, acupuncture stretch or Watsu, flotation therapy, and Shirodara and hot stone massage.
Yeah, that's all fun stuff.
All the fun stuff, yeah. But they don't have to be familiar with this if they work in those industries.
Yeah.
So chapter 14, it's going to have 2 slides. So I updated the section on pain. I went to a little, because I love history, I went to a little bit about how these theories develop over time. And the 6th edition only gave 2 theories. This has got like 6, but they're all like little paragraphs. But still, it's kind of fun to think about, it's interesting the way they used to think about pain. And then, of course, you saw with the bulleted section, I did the range of motion assessments. I've added things like the barriers in the infield. I added gait disorders after the section on gait assessment, so you can use that in your progress notes and treatment plan. I added more ones on orthopedic assessment, because I'm starting to see therapists needing a little bit more. There's actually like a step-by-step thing, like 1, 2, 3, 4. And I added much more pictures. I'm sure you probably saw that.
Yeah.
More pictures about how to do it.
I'm curious, because I know this is kind of a hot button topic sometimes with I've seen in the discussions with the massage educators about whether or not to even include these in entry level massage education. And so they're in your book, so you obviously feel they are important, but what are your thoughts about people thinking that they shouldn't go?
Okay, so entry level is considered 500 to 600 hours.
Mhm,
Many schools teach over that. So they're
mhm,
teaching beyond entry level. And yes, they teach this stuff.
mhm,
All of these tests do is to rule out uh, certain neurological disorders that need to be seen by other specialists.
mhm.
So that's really what the purpose
Yeah.
is not to tell you what to work on, but tell you what not to work on. So you
Mhm.
realize this is not has nothing to do with soft tissue. This is something that needs to be seen by not a massage therapist.
Yeah.
So that's to me, I think they're very important,
Yeah,
especially
I
in
think so
clinical
too.
massage. Yeah,
Yeah, and I think too, when we tell our students about it, or said, if anything, to understand what these are, because you're going to be working with clients who have come from PTs or they're orthopedic surgeons, or you're going to see reports, you're going to know what's happening, you're going to maybe even refer back and forth or work with, like in a clinic where you're working with alongside of some of these practitioners, and so to understand what these assessments are and what they do, I think is very important.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Mhm.
And I developed further the section on sports massage, and this is why tactical athletes got moved from chapter 11, because when you talk about sports massage, you were talking about athletes.
Mhm.
So it
Mhm.
just seemed very natural to go into the tactical athlete as a subset of the
Mhm.
athlete. And because I developed a section, I got so excited about this because I'm developed a section on different types of massage. The fourth type is rehabilitative massage when there's been an injury.
Mhm.
So I expanded the section on soft tissue injuries, and I go into a lot of the four phases. Hemostasis, regeneration, remodeling,
Right.
inflammation.
The
Talk
healing
about
stages.
those and how long they are and why we have to wait for a certain
Mhm.
time frame so the student understands the why.
Yeah.
So that's in there. And then on the next slide, I expanded the section on MET and PNF. Gets so confusing for so many students. As long as they understand it's the same thing.
Mm.
One is osteopathic, one's from PT. They were even developed at the same time in history, and they were actually developed to deal with post-polio issues.
Mm.
And so the way that they were intended and the way that they're practiced today have changed. They're still wonderful, but you
Mhm.
can't use the 1950 model in 2023.
Right. Yeah.
The techniques you can't, but not the model.
Mhm.
And we explain that. And we go into a little bit more about trigger points. And I love this so much because I was on a legal case recently where there was an injury caused by some trigger point work. And they quoted Travell's book as being their reason for their applying manual pressure, digital pressure on this trigger point. But when you dive into the book, if you've ever read the book, Myofascial Pain and Dysfunction, Janet Travell and David Simons themselves say manual pressure is contraindicated on these points.
Wow. I've
Yes.
only looked at the pretty pictures. I haven't
Okay,
really, I'll be
don't show
honest.
the
I
pretty
haven't.
picture. But that's what a lot of therapists do, and they don't understand that just because it's a trigger point doesn't mean the thing to do is press on it. So I'll go into a little bit more about the logic behind it and when it's good, when it's not good. And then
Mhm.
we go into more about post-surgical guidelines.
Oh, that's
When,
awesome.
yeah, when can we, again, still about the injury rehab, because sometimes
Right.
surgery is part of what's needed. And then
Mhm.
we talk about scar tissue massage in chapter 14, still under the umbrella of clinical massage, not
Mhm.
wellness massage. So again, the models are out there. We just don't use them as often as we should.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're going to say goodbye to chapter 14. I'm going to jump straight to chapter 16. And I had the pleasure of working with a group in New Mexico last year that was the Ayurvedic Institute in Albuquerque
Mhm.
and blew my socks off. And I got so much more excited about Marma points than I ever have before. So I added just a couple of paragraphs about Marma points and pranayama in the section on Ayurvedic principles. And so that was just kind of fun. This got a
Yeah.
tiny little update, but still very meaningful, very meaningful.
Oh, yeah.
And under business and marketing, now we're on chapter 17. We're about to say goodbye to the first unit, because in the textbook, as you remember, unit 1 through 17 is about basically massage, and 18 through 30 is the APK.
Right.
I call it APK.
I like that.
So so then, the whole concept about coaching has changed, completely changed. So I added a section on business coaches. I had a coach themselves, define what coaching is. And so that got in there. And then I updated the section on job interviews, rescheduling clients, and then patents and trademarks. These were on the MBLACs.
Oh.
So be sure that your students understand the difference between a patent and a trademark.
Okay.
And that's bulleted in those sections, my darling. Okay, so the only thing about Intro to A&P, this is the foundation, I'll call it the body compass chapter, as I added allostasis to homeostasis. And I'm seeing this on the MBLEX, and I'm seeing it in a lot of the A&P books. And so I thought, nah, this is a good addition. So we added allostasis to be the process of moving something back into homeostasis.
Oh, I got to update my slide for tomorrow. I just thought, okay.
One slide. I can send you the PowerPoint.
Okay.
So, and all of these you're going to see updated pathology. So I'm not going to really focus a lot on those. But in this one, I thought this was fascinating. I actually had this in the kinesiology chapter, but I actually moved it to this chapter because as you talk about flexion, extension, circumduction, lateral rotation, we talk about the plane in which it occurs.
Yes.
So that has been added, and I went ahead and highlighted this. This is from chapter 20. So when I talk about flexion and extension, you can see this last line, flexion and extension occur in the sagittal plane.
Right.
And just so you know, these things are represented on the MBLEX. So make sure your students understand not only the movement, but what plane it occurs in. And like I added a second one because it was on the same little screenshot. Lateral and medial rotations occur in the horizontal plane. Nice. So that has been added to chapter 20. I'm sorry, that was 19. Chapter 20, we just added some new images. This is about muscular contraction primarily, and updated pathologies. Now, chapter 21, one of my favorite chapters, along with chapter 11, is kinesiology. And I added quite a few changes to this one. A lot of the times, this is just for more user friendly, might be a word. So again, back to the bulleted concept. When we talk about bones, I added the joints in a bulleted section.
Oh, I love that. This is one of my absolute favorite sections of your book. I love how you break down each bone with the bony landmarks. It's like one of my highlights when I teach the intro classes, to be like, look at this, it's broken down for you. It's amazing.
Yeah. So, okay. So anyway, so we talk about, but they're bulleted now, which I really, really like. Nice. You're going to love these changes, Michelle. Okay. This one, I added palpation information.
Nice.
So now this is mainly for bony landmarks. If you look at the beginning of the muscle section, I talk about how to palpate muscle. So I'm not going to go over that again. But here, like the fibular head and the lateral malleoles are easily palpated. So it's going to be in the note section. If it can be palpated, we just mention that. And you can also see, again, the bulleted section here about the joints. We added some new images. I love this one of the ribs, because this is a concept that isn't often thought about or discussed very much. And then I added these two together when you talk about the different facets, and then the intervertebral foramen here. So I like this picture. This was an additional picture. And there's many. This is just a few. And I'll tell you something interesting about publishing world. At least with Elsevier books, I'm only allowed so many new images.
Okay.
This was a new image that I had created. And I love to talk about the cross-section, again, in the thoracic area region. Yeah. It talks about the transversus spinalis and the erector spinae, and how one is more anterior posterior and one is more medial lateral. So they can think about muscles in terms of layers.
Yeah.
But I'm allowed only, I think it's 10 images per title,
Interesting.
and that's it. Now, lucky for me, a couple of titles I really liked. There was a kinesiology book by Newman that I really, really liked. So I was able, and he's got several editions out. So it's 10 per like edition. So if he had like a third and a fourth, I got 10 from third and 10 from fourth. So I got 20.
Nice.
Yay.
Ah,
But it is something that's changed in the publishing world.
oh,
This is one of my favorites. Again, this is from the book I just mentioned, kinesiology book. And you can see how a lot of the forearm muscles are now in groups because this is how
yeah.
they function.
Mm-hmm.
And so students will have a whole lot easier time looking at all these are extensors, and here's a lateral epicondyle, so they can make that connection
Mm-hmm.
visually.
Yeah.
And this is another favorite of mine, the glutes.
Yep.
And here's, of course, the lovely piriformis, and then glute minimus and medius, cut and reflected. You've got the sacrotuberous ligament here, and the wonderful sciatic nerve. So one beautiful picture. And here's another example of a learning tip
Mm-hmm.
in the notes section. So yeah, I had a lot of fun with this chapter. This is another one that came out so beautiful, and another borrow. This is a calf muscle minus the gastrocnemius, but you
Mm-hmm.
can see how the gastrocnemius is really up here on the femur, along with the plantaris, and you can see this beautiful soleus muscle and how all attached onto the Achilles tendon. I really like that picture.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's just a little bit of a preview of chapter 22, the kines chapter. For the other ones, again, I added pigmentations, including tattoos, by the way,
Ooh.
in this section. Freckles and hemangiomas and section on skin cancer for sure. And then we updated the pathologies, added a few new images. Nervous system, we added gamma rays. We again, another update. We found a new brainwave. So I added that to brainwaves. I expanded the section on reflexes, and of course, new images and updated pathologies.
Yay. Oh, I love that. The nerve picture with
Thank you. Yeah,
the axon and yeah.
that one came out pretty. So endocrine system, no major changes, just the pathologies. Same thing with reproductive system. Again, you're going to see this pretty much throughout. It's just a few new images, a few updated pathologies.
So when you're saying updated pathologies, are you saying that there's more information related to existing pathologies, or we've discovered new conditions?
Oh
I
no,
just
updated the way that we think about them.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure
Um,
that if everyone understood that that's
Yeah,
what we
thank
meant.
you.
Yeah.
It's pretty much, what I did was in my pathology book, I've got like over 300 pathologies. Okay.
Mhm.
In the principles and practice book, I just focused on the most common ones you can see on your table.
Right.
And this is another thing, as we're working, I am on the committee that helps to write the NBLEX questions, and I'm loving the conversations that's going on right now with
Yeah.
the Federation. But we're looking at, is this really what they're going to see? If it's not, we consider it trivial, and we oftentimes toss it out.
Yeah.
So
That makes sense.
we're preparing students for the real world.
Yeah, that's
If they
awesome.
need it, they've got a resource, either my book or Werner's book, that they can go to.
Yeah.
But that's kind of when I say update the pathologies, it's a little bit more meat and potatoes. And again, I tried to write it for everyone to understand.
Yeah.
Not anyway. I'll leave it at that. Again, lymphatic system updated, the lymphatic pathologies and the immunity conditions. Same thing with 28, 29, and 30. So that pretty much is a quick little walkthrough. What are your thoughts, my dear?
Oh my goodness. I'm overwhelmed in a way because I want to just enhance our curriculum so much and make sure that we're using everything to the most advantage that we have here. I think everything's in mind for the student and to make it helpful for them. So that's really, really appreciative on our end. And I'm always grateful for your book because I don't know if you know here, the NBLEX is not required for Arizona students that graduate from Arizona approved schools, but we still have students who take it because they plan to go to other states or just because they want to check their knowledge. And because I let them know that your book is so well in line with the competencies and the core, what's covered, our pass rate is really great. And because I get them to go to use that as much as they can and the resources that are available. So it's a really great massage school in a compact edition. I think like it's a wonderful place for us to branch off from our curriculum. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. And I really try, Michelle, to not include a lot of fluff.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, after I write a paragraph, I am very often rereading the paragraph and saying, what words can I take out and still not dilute the meaning, the essence of
Mm-hmm.
what it is I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to say.
Yeah.
One of the worst things that I've experienced as a student myself, or other students when they talk to me about using the book, is you get through a paragraph and you don't know what you've read.
Mm-hmm.
What was the point of the paragraph? Where was the author trying to lead me?
Yeah.
So I use this, it's called the bluff method.
Mm.
It's bottom line up front. So I try to put the most important first,
Yeah.
very first lead in sentence. And then everything else is an explanation or a supportive comment to that very first sentence.
Nice.
So when you're reading, you're going pow, and then digest, then pow, then digest. So it was
Nice.
all pretty strategic or formulaic, if you want to call it that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Always thinking about the reader, the learner, the end user might be a better word.
Yeah, I love that. I'm going to put us back up here to be able to see our gorgeous faces. That's yeah, I really think it's so easy to follow, and I love the bullet points and that more visually appealing and helpful for our students to be able to focus on that. And so with the evolve section, the thing that comes with you scratch off the code and go online for extra resources. I know you said you had some of the research information. Is there anything else that's been updated or added with that?
Those are the main things. We added a abbreviation table. So when they're doing their treatment notes, their
Mm-hmm.
FR, their SOAP, whatever you guys are teaching, there's an abbreviation online as well. But what we've noticed, this is kind of sad to say, we've noticed that by and large, the students are not using Evolve.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't put anything important
Uh-huh.
on Evolve. If it's important, it's going to be in the textbook.
Yeah. Yeah.
If they want more, if teachers want more, it's there.
Mm-hmm.
But and Elsevier keeps pretty good track of who's using what and why.
Yeah.
Not surprising, digital books have not caught on massage schools.
Mm-mm.
They
Yeah.
have not, and part of it is you use one book for the majority of the curriculum,
Mm-hmm.
so it's spread out over multiple courses.
Right.
Unlike a university, which has here's your accounting, it's one book. Here's this is one book. So ebooks kind of make sense.
Yeah.
But for entry-level education, they don't make too much sense because it's a chapter in the book. It's not a whole separate book.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, and I know like I got access to the digital version, before I got the hard copy, and I didn't peruse it as much as I was just like, oh, I'm gonna read all this, So it's just the nature of it too, to how we focus on our work, I think.
Yeah,
so.
And there was some research recently that said that during COVID, when we went online, that pass rates for NBLEX went down.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
So I think that there's something to be said about the traditional education at the face-to-face, the opportunity for real-time learning, the print media. I think all of that has been much more substantiated in research for providing a better learning experience.
Yeah, I believe it. That's for sure. I know we do have our program is hybrid, and so I'm always trying to make the online content more robust and have connections between that and back in the classroom. And it's not perfect. There's always room to grow, but yeah, with the flexibility offer, sometimes you have to make some changes that might not be perfect, but always great resources to have. That I'm grateful for everyone who has all these online content things for us to access for our students to support them. So that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Susan, I want to thank you so much for coming on. That was a great walkthrough for our students. I'm going to make sure that they pay attention to that, that all the great things that are available now in the new edition, and that we kind of navigate what they're looking at, what to look for, and our instructors in particular. This one is going to be a must watch for all of our instructors so that we can better support our students in the classroom. So I really appreciate all the work you've took into putting together that slideshow for us and taking the time to talk to us about it today.
And reach out anytime and tell your instructors, just shoot me an email, shoot me a Facebook message, whatever, and I'm right on it. I'm there to support you, your quest for learning and educational excellence.
Yes, and you have done more times than I can count that you have done that right away and immediately respond back. So yes, you're true to your word, and I appreciate you supporting us all the time. Yeah.
Thanks, Michelle.
Okay, absolutely. And to everyone else, thank you so much for joining, and we'll see you next time with a brand new guest.